What's up, everybody? Thanks for coming back to Stumblin Forward. I'm one of your hosts, Monica Ortega.
And I'm Kristen Herman.
And today we have a super awesome guest. As an author, speaker, and founder of DM Consulting LLC, Dawn Marcotte loves to share her insights in building a successful online business. As a mother who worked full-time in the corporate world while being a freelance writer as a side gig, Dawn combines the lessons learned from both worlds to create processes that are repeatable and reliable. Her passion is to teach women entrepreneurs the skills they need to get clients and build a successful business while staying true to their values and being authentic. Thanks for being on the show, Dawn.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course. Well, I would love to learn a little bit more about you if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on.
Sure. So like you just said, I'm a mom, got two kids who are practically grown. One of them is actually a young adult, and very proud of my two girls. I also worked in the corporate world for 30 years. And as many other people, got laid off in 2020 due to COVID. So at that point, I had been a freelance writer on the side for over 10 years. And I thought, okay, can't just sit around cleaning house and playing video games. I should probably actually do something constructive. So I decided to see if I couldn't take all of the skills and knowledge that I gained over those 10 years in online business and kind of share it around and help other women grow their business, because it turns out that as a lot of people got laid off, a lot of people had the same idea. Hey, let me see what I can do online to try and earn some income, right? So it just really seemed like there was a need there for that kind of thing. But I'm not actually a coach. I love to teach people. I love to share what I've learned, but I'm not a coach. I don't have a coaching program, maybe is a better way to put that. I write books. I love to write. I have loved to write since I was a little kid. So I specialize in kind of the how-to type of book, as opposed to, fictional or something fun to read. Although I think my books are fun to read, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, so I just kind of.
I'm sure that's not true.
They're terrible. You don't want to try it. Very dry, very dry.
I know how to promote myself. So.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, and that's what I did. I just kind of jumped in. I started a Facebook group, which I had never done before. That's been just a ton of fun to interact with the ladies in that. And I wrote a book, published it in November, on how to create and build a Facebook group, because I thought, people might need to know how to do that. And everybody that you listen to has a little bit different take on it. Do this, do this, do this, right? But nobody does it the same way, obviously, because we all have different skills. It works different for everybody. So I took a bunch of different free classes, a couple of paid classes, put it all together, put it in a book and published it. And that's just kind of my business model. I will find a hot topic or something that seems to be a need that people need information about. I gather the information, I put it in a book, and I publish it. So right now I'm working on my next book, which I'm super excited to share with you guys. It's about 9 myths that I have identified. Oh, I shouldn't say I have identified. I have asked about online, and people said, oh, I can't believe I thought it would be easy, or everybody was saying it was going to be really fast, or, different things like that. So I actually asked online, what are some things that you have heard that you found not to be true once you got into it, and came up with 9 kind of themes that people kept hitting over and over and over again. So I am working on a book that I'm hoping to get out later this summer on Amazon.
Well, congratulations on your first book. I think it's so interesting because I feel like most people wait until they are an expert at something to write a book, where instead you go and learn about something and then turn around and teach it, which is
exactly.
Well, that's what I'm curious about, though, Dawn. When you were starting, so you're working in the corporate world when you were raising your kids, and you were kind of just doing your own thing as a freelance writer. Right. So were you writing novels back then, or is it more just like article based?
No, actually, I started out in what is called a content mill. I don't know if you're familiar with that term or not, but back in the day when the internet was new and shiny, the algorithm for Google worked a certain way, right? And people figured it out. And these companies figured out that if you stuff an article with keywords, Google will put it to the top and all the ads and things will get hits, right? So they'll make money. So there were all these different companies, and I worked for 4 or 5 of them, writing 400-word articles on things like, what does a VIN number mean? How do you grow irises in the garden, right? Just anything you could think of that a person would Google on the internet, they would have someone write an article for it. And the algorithm worked in such a way that it would pop to the top, and they made lots and lots of money doing this. And of course I got paid, which was great because I was not interested in having a business and doing the invoicing and all those business things that you have to do, right? So that was great. But then Google changed their algorithm, as Google frequently does. And those 5 publishers I worked for literally went out of business overnight because Google no longer allowed keyword stuffing, because that's what it was. These were not valuable articles. This was fluff, and let's put these 3 words in these specific spots, that kind of thing, right? But it taught me how to write in a certain way, which is lots of action verbs, very direct, lots of informational kind of stuff. And it also taught me how to do research online, because they did require a certain number of reputable resources just in case somebody really did want the detailed information. So that kind of was how I got started in it. And I really enjoyed it. But then somebody said, well, you need to have a blog. That's how you make money. You should go make your own blog. So I did that. Never made a lot of money at it, but I had a lot of fun with it. It was a blog about keeping kids away from electronic devices. I have 2 kids. At that time, they were young, and I was very passionate about the idea that kids do not need to have their face in a screen. And at that time, it was computers and television for more than half hour a day. That leaves a lot of day. So I had this website, and I would talk about all kinds of, science experiments, arts and crafts and books and activities. And then I live in the Twin Cities, and lots of stuff to do locally. So I would go to parks, and I would, film the park and review it, or go to a museum and talk about whatever, right? The whole thing was around kids and keeping them busy. And so I wrote a book to put all of that together, and it sold really well. And I thought,
what was the title of that one?
And it's actually still available. It's called, what is it called? The App Age, I think is what it's called.
The App
terrible.
Age.
Yeah.
No, it's good though, because I feel like most of your writing is around what you know, and then also informational. So it's helping other people with specific things, and like it's one topic. But you have the experience yourself, which is really interesting. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I write the way I talk. So, it's a very natural skill for me. That's not a natural skill for everybody. But one of the other things I learned in having that blog is I started following this guy named Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. If you've ever heard of him, he's fabulous. I love him. But he was talking about, at that time, he was brand new too. He had just started out. And he was talking about, you don't need to be an expert. You just need to know more than the people that you're teaching. And that was a big aha moment for me. So
that's kind of, I felt like the same thing. I was telling Kristen actually last week that, I was waiting to write a book because I thought I'm still in the story. And then I thought, but I've learned enough that I'm in the middle of someone else's beginning. So there's a lot of knowledge in there to share that people don't think about, because they think they need a degree in it. They have to have 20 years experience and a career in it. So I love that you just go for it. I love that you learn something and then you're like, yep, I'm gonna write a book about it.
That's right. And I think people connect with it a little bit more because I'm not the expert, and I'm not representing myself as the expert. I'm just another person on a journey to learn something or do something or whatever. Here's my experience. If it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. You can move on to the next thing. I don't set myself up as an expert, like I said. And I think that really resonates with people that might not otherwise.
Yeah. For sure. So what kind of things would you say that you learned in your process of going from the corporate world to freelance to now going after your own stuff? I mean, that's quite the journey. So
yeah, it is. It has been a journey. And I'll be honest, it's terrifying. I thought, and this is terrible, I should know better than this. After being, as a side gig, I should have known better. But I thought, I'm going to do this. In 3 months, I'm going to be making tons and tons of money. No, not so much. It just didn't work that way. But I found it really interesting that some of the things that are so basic in the corporate world that I think apply to the entrepreneurial world don't seem to really be well known. Things like repeatable and reliable processes that are repeatable in that it doesn't matter who's doing them or what product you plug in. If you have a sales funnel that works, it shouldn't matter whether you're selling coaching or a class or a book or whatever. You should be able to plug something into that, follow that process, and get the same results, which is sales or clients. Now that sales funnel isn't going to be the same for you or the same for me. Everybody's going to have a little bit different take on it, but we should be able to figure out something that works for all of us, for us individually, and just use it over and over and over again. But nobody seems to talk about that or identify that as something that's a good thing. And that confused me a lot when I started.
Yeah, I think so many entrepreneurs, they just start one thing that they're creative in and hope that it really works, but then there's no way to scale it. So like what you said, putting those processes into place, then you can teach it to the next person to do under you while you go work on something else. But a lot of entrepreneurs don't think that way. We just think, I like this and I like this.
Yeah. Well, I was also thinking with that, you're doing something that you love and you want to like do a business with that as an entrepreneur. But what you were saying also with grabbing clients and moving the business forward is a completely different story. So having a process and having someone to reach out to or having someone like something to help you with to do that, it's different than the actual product or the actual skill. There's also the business side, which I think you're identifying. Yeah. Yes,
exactly. Two different things. And the other thing I have found that's very surprising to me is the lack of focus on data, gathering data. For example, in marketing, right? Hey, do this thing and you're going to get 50 clients in a month, right? And they do it for 2 days. It doesn't work. And they move on to something else, right? There's that, it's not working.
Discouraged.
And you get discouraged. Yeah. And I think if people realize, no, you need to pick a direction, any direction, it doesn't matter. But go that way for 30 days or 60 days or 90, whatever you decide is the period of time that you can figure out whether or not it's working, and then review it and tweak it. Don't just try it for a couple of days and then go in a different direction. You have to stick with it because that consistency is what grows the business, what grows the momentum. And you don't get any momentum if you're jumping from one thing to another.
Yeah. So with DM Consulting, that started when you were during like the 2020 pandemic?
Yeah. When I got laid off, I started a real business as opposed to just the freelancing that I had done on the side was just kind of a independent contractor kind of thing. I didn't register as a business. I didn't do anything like that. But when I started DM Consulting, I actually didn't start as a freelance writer. I had all this experience doing social media marketing, things like that. And I thought, I'm going to do that because I have all this experience. So I did that for a month. I had a client that hired me. It was great. And realized, nope, don't like this. It's fun when I do it for myself. It's not so much fun when I have to do it for somebody else. I don't want to do this anymore. So that was actually why I started. Yeah, exactly. I was like, no. So luckily the client was very understanding and I said, this is not working out for you. This is not working out for me. Let's just stop and you go your way and I'll go mine, and we're going to stay friends. And that's exactly what happened. I still think she is an absolutely fabulous coach. She's a wonderful person. I still recommend her to people online, but we're just not going to do business together in that way. And that was a learning experience for both of us. I'm glad I did it. But then after that, I moved on to the writing thing. I'm like, okay, well, let's just see if we can turn this writing into a thing. And so that's kind of what I've been following ever since.
I love that.
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
You go. Okay. So speaking of the writing, because I know that you were talking about your new book that you've been working on recently.
Yes.
Where did that idea come from? Why this topic?
Well, so I had started a Facebook group in September of last year for new entrepreneurs. Again, let me back up just for a second. I'm a huge fan of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. Big in the corporate world, not so big in the entrepreneurial world, but it applies in both places. So I read the book, I made this Facebook group, and I'm like, these people could really benefit from this knowledge and this stuff. So I started sharing it and asking, what are you struggling with? What are you struggling with? And I kept getting the same kinds of responses that, it's taking me longer than I thought it would. Why can't I figure this out? Things like that. So I realized that there's a real gap there between expectations and reality. And that a lot of people who could make a go of it, because I'll be honest, I think the internet is one of the best ways to make money for everyone. You don't need a college degree. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need anything but passion and a phone. You don't even need a computer. You can do it on your smartphone if you have to, right? But there was just such a big gap, and people were just giving up because they had these expectations of, I'm going to be rich in 60 days. I'm going to, whatever, right? And so I thought, no, I really want to share the reality. And the thing that I found most surprising when I was writing this book, I did interviews. I interviewed 20 plus entrepreneurs. And there were several things that came up over and over, but one of the questions I asked them was, when did you start consistently making money? And I expected answers all over the board. I got one answer from absolutely every single one of them: a year. It took just around a year to pull everything together, put the pieces together, get the momentum going. Well, sometimes it takes a little longer.
Marcotte, you make money.
But it's
I'm
true,
sure that
right?
they're not talking like a year to be a millionaire.
No.
They're talking
consistent
about
amount of money, just enough to live on, not an extra 10. Because I'll be honest, I was profitable in my business the first month, right? But $10 more than what I'm spending, that's not going to pay any bills, right? So yeah, it looks great when you can say, yes, I was profitable. Again, $10, yeah, not such a big deal. But that was so consistent that everyone, and they were products, they were services, they were all kinds of different businesses, but they all said at about a year, they really figured it out. It just all gelled together. And that's when it started growing and scaling, and they could make a living at it, and it just clicked. And I thought, oh, not what I expected. So that was just kind of fun to find that out too. But that's why I did it. I think if people don't have those expectations, they'll stick with it longer and they will make it. Because if you make it to that first year, so many people at that point, then, okay, we can keep going and we can make financial freedom from this. We can become financially independent. And that's the goal, really, is to not have to depend on just one stream of income if you're a 9-to-5er.
Yeah. And I think too, just, talking from my own experience, I wasn't making enough to live off of. I still am not. But when you see a way, and I think it took about a year when I started seeing how, and once you know the how, then it's just a matter of like, how long are you going to stick with it, but you know the way to go. So I love that.
Exactly. Exactly.
And like we were talking about, being consistent with it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Knowing the way and being consistent.
That was the other two topics that came up over and over and over again was authenticity, be authentic to who you are, and be consistent. And it's true. You hear it all the time, but yet people still don't seem to follow through with it, or they struggle with following through. And I can understand that. There's so many hats. All of a sudden you're doing everything. And it's hard to get organized, and what are your priorities and that whole thing. So it takes a while to figure it out.
So figuring out this book and writing it, because I know you don't have a title for it yet, but you will have a title for it. It'll be great. But what were some of the challenges you had writing this? Because I know you've gotten some resources from your Facebook group, but what were some of the big challenges?
Some of the bigger challenges, I think, were to try and not tell people the right way to do it. Because that's the whole kind of underlying theme throughout the book, is there is no one right way. And I would find myself, no, if you do this, then your Facebook group will grow. No, wait, can't do that because it might not work for them. I don't know them. So I can't do that. So taking that step back was a little more difficult, because I do love to tell people what to do. Just ask my children. And so that was a little difficult. That, and actually picking the 9 lies to put in was more difficult than I thought it would be. The first 3, very easy. But after that, it got a little more difficult because there were so many more to choose from. So that's where I had help from not just my group. I belong to several Facebook groups, and so I went out to them and kind of polled and tried to poll to find out what are the things that people are struggling the most with, and things like being alone. A lot of people don't want to hire a coach. A lot of people can't afford to hire a coach right out of the gate. And yet one of the things that people I interviewed said over and over and over again, you need to find a support group, team, coach, mentor, something. You can't do it alone. Everybody needs a cheering squad to help us get through the tough times.
I love that. So if somebody's just starting out as an entrepreneur, you've learned all this stuff you put into a book, what kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, I think when you're very first starting out, there's a couple of things that people don't talk about that are still important to do or to know or to try and figure out. And number one is that, yes, it's great to have a passion, but you need to figure out where that passion intersects with what people will actually pay for. Just because you figured out how to get your kids to sleep through the night doesn't mean anybody's going to pay you to tell them how to get their kids to sleep through the night, right? You got to find that intersection, and people don't always think about that. A lot of times people that are starting businesses have solved a problem for themselves, and they want to share that solution with the world because it has been so life-changing for them. And that's a great place to start, but you got to figure out what are people going to pay for, or you're not going to make a business out of it. The other thing is the financial part. A lot of people go into online business thinking they're not going to need to invest in anything with very much money. And it's true, you can get by with a very, very little, almost free, depending on how you do it, but there will still be things you need to invest in. So you need to start out with some idea of what are your personal bills that you're going to need to pay for. What's the minimum that you're going to need to survive, so that you know how long you can pursue this. If you got laid off, you don't have a job. If you're as a side gig, you maybe don't need to do that quite as much, but be aware that scaling your business is what's going to bring you the money. So you are going to need to automate, and that usually means a subscription to some kind of software, whether it's automating your emails, or there's all kinds of things that I automate in my Facebook. When I let people into my group, I send them a message. It's all automated so that I'm not in there every 10 minutes going, all right, who wants in my group? I got to push some buttons and type out a message and whatever, right? But it costs money, but it's worth it. So think about the financial side of things before you jump in. And then I think the third thing is, if you can, spend some time testing your theory, testing your product before you jump all the way in. Make sure there's a need for it or a demand for it, because if there's not, it's not going to do you any good. It may be that you present it as a class, but somebody says, no, you know what? I would rather talk to you one-on-one. You should go into coaching, right? So you might get some feedback to point you in a different direction. So be open to that. And I think those are the three things really. I think that people that are starting out should know. Doing
the market research. And I always say one of my biggest mistakes is I didn't treat my business as a business. You have to create that business plan and see where it's going and the financial part. I think that's one thing. Everybody either wants to quit and just go full time, even though they don't have a plan, or you have to have a side gig. You have to have a solution because you still have to.
Exactly.
Yeah. You have to have something. And then I do think that having that plan is important, but sometimes it's like, it takes a little bit longer than people think to make like that business plan. They don't actually know specifically where they want to go. And then that's where the shifts will happen. I think that happened a lot with Marcotte Goes, and it's definitely happening with Creative World Productions. So it happens all the time. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share specifically about your book, or, anything that, that the reader, listeners would love to know, and readers?
And readers, so just my Facebook group is Women Coaches and Consultants Growing Our Business. If you're interested in learning more or just whatever, I am always happy to give free advice. Stop by there. I do have a website that has a lot of free information, as well as a membership component. So we talked a little bit about the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I took that book and created a class that I call the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Entrepreneurs, because the book was written by a man before the internet existed. And so that's kind of the mind frame it comes from. So I rewrote it for women in the age of social media, or I took it. Anyway, there's a class there. So
no, that's great. Honestly, the 7 Habits is one of those books that I was really introduced when I was doing the acting career, trying to do more entertainment. So it was something that my teachers would always be like, you should read the 7 Habits. So it was it is pushed even. I think it benefits everywhere. So
it does. It doesn't matter who you are, it benefits. And if you have teenage children, you should read the section about communication. Very effective.
Probably could help with any relationship, really, but maybe teenagers.
It does. But if you have teenage children, it's particularly effective.
Awesome. So do you have Instagram as well? Are you on?
I do. I have no idea what I'm doing on Instagram, but I do have one there. So
you'll get there,
my name. And I will get there. I will.
And then you'll write a book about it.
Yeah,
I have a list. I have like 2 or 3 more books in mind. So I got to get this one done, and then we'll.
I love your motivation for your writing, because I feel like you have like so many ideas and so many like specific ways you want to help people navigate basically either life or like just new things like technology. Even though I grew up in technology, I still have problems with it. So it's like one of those things.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
You're not. Well, I just wanted to say, thank you so much for being on the show, Dawn, and sharing everything that you've accomplished. It's been, amazing, and all the little nuggets of wisdom for entrepreneurs and business owners alike. So, and what you do for women in entrepreneurs. So thank you. And all the people who are listening, we are on Apple Podcasts. Please go and leave us 5 stars and a review. We're also on Spotify. This video will be up on YouTube. And thanks again, Dawn. And I'm one of your hosts, Kristen Herman.
And I'm Monica Ortega. And thank you, Dawn. See you guys next time.
Thank you so much.